Stu back here. Today I'm reassembling my KWA HK45 pretty much from absolute strip down. Part number 26, this one here, was the cause of most of my problems. So the gas valve on the back of the magazine is struck by part number 27. That swings on part 26. I've got a new one here already installed. Part 25 interacts with the sear systems using this slot. The whole assembly basically pivots inside the gun. When the hammer strikes this bit, it pushes forward, knocks this into the valve. Important part number 23 and part number 123. This plate and cotter pin assembly, they need to go in at the same time as this because they nestle together like that. So this slot and this hole are common. The main pin will go through there. This pin rests in the elbow here of part 26, so that all needs to go in first together. Might take some jostling around. One easy way, use a screwdriver to isolate that. So part 23 and the pin 123 are isolated there. Insert part 26 down into its slot. It's all pretty fiddly. Got it in there like that. So back that off a bit, you can see now there's a pin that goes through here. Part 65, it's knurled a bit at one end. That end goes to the top side here. Push that through. Make sure that's seated down in the slot properly. And that'll go through there, maybe persuade it. A bit of a tap. Try and make it flush. This is important to get right before you start assembling it because this is not the first time I've had to do this because of this problem. So there you go. That's the valve striker arm there, part 27. Part 123, which is inserted into part 23. Okay, so your chassis is now ready to go back in. I left the trigger in, I didn't need to take that out, so the trigger and trigger spring is still there. Before you put it in, trigger transfer bar, part number 162. So you need to align that. There's a nub here at this end, that goes into the trigger part there. And seat the back end down like that. So, okay, so with that in place, the whole lot can go back in the frame. So sometimes levering it forward to push the trigger out of the way helps, and the rest of it just sits in at the back with a bit of persuasion. Okay, that's all in place. You can see the trigger transfer bar there working. Now at the front, part 118, this small screw goes into the front, holds the chassis into the plastic frame, tighten that down, okay, in there. So next up, part 85, this spring U-shape inwards and a little hook to the bottom, that fits in this slot here. That helps the slide stop release in terms of retaining it under a bit of spring pressure so it seats. Next up, parts 88 and 69. 88 is the spring, 69 is this plunger. This is the reset for the transfer bar. So that goes into the hole at the bottom of the screwdriver. This is a pain in the backside part. It tends to jump out every time you pull the trigger until it's all fully assembled. So pop that down in there as best you can. And the trigger transfer bar just rests on it. Next up, part 17. this plastic drum, which basically the hammer and all the sear components rotate on. It's full of different slots and holes for locating different things. There's a notch cut out of it at the bottom there. That aligns with a notch corresponding on the slot of the frame. Just loosely put that in. Part 282, the main hammer block, that's going to go in there as well, so try and align it amongst all those bits. It's a bit of a three-handed job. You've got to make sure the trigger transfer bar is down against spring tension. Hold that down, put that in. Push that through. All a bit of a three-handed job. Okay, so finally got it through there. Part 23 itself obstructs through here a bit. You might need to push that out of the way to try and get the drum through. Part 17 can't get through because of that. There, so finally you need to push down on the hammer sometimes to make sure that's out of the way. Okay, next up, spring number 86, part 86, and this flag type thing here, part 51. So the spring sits in this cutout down the side here. If you just drop in there, you might need to push it in and deflect it, so that seats in there. The flag goes on top of it. Use a thin screwdriver to push it down. You can see through here that obstructs the main pin going in through the sear system. Part 313, that wants to go in on top, so push the flag down out of the way using a screwdriver. Start it off facing forwards. Should go through. Turn it. You need to rotate it around a bit to get it to interface with the different things inside. Keep that flag depressed out of the way. Watch it doesn't push part 17 out as well. The whole operation's pretty fiddly, to be honest. Everything needs to be pushed out of the way as it moves through. There we go. So part 23 there needs pushing forwards as well to clear it. Then if you rotate it upwards a bit and then forwards a bit, it's kind of like picking a lock with this. You have to, there you go, turn it around different places at different times to get it to interact with different things. So now that's back in place. Leave it on the fire selection point. So with all that back together, next up part 30, another part of the sear mechanism. So you want this slanted bit to the front. There's a notch on the edge of part 313 that we just put through. That needs to seat over that up against the other side like that. So there's a gap here as well. So that seats over that notch on the main bar that goes through that we just put in. So next up, parts 52 and 24. It's all part of the elaborate sear and decocking mechanism. So part 24 seats on top of part 52. You put this through here, so it's like a common bar size that goes through the whole thing. You can see at the back there's some play. Part 24 can rotate back and front on part 52, so that goes in as a pair. 24 moves around on 52, push that in there. Right, so we've got it in. That can go down now. Okay. Plunger and spring that basically push up on this part here. So that's part 83 is the spring, and part 69 is the plunger. They go in this little hole at the back here, just in front to the side of the hammer. So this curved section goes towards the back, and that slides in this slot at the side. You might need to take the tension off the hammer or trigger to help get it in place, and it rides in this U shape here. So again, trying to juggle everything, getting into place. Okay, and then so use the screwdriver trick again, align all the parts as best you can. Okay, so now the entire system's functioning. Okay, so again, push your pin, part 71, all the way through, move the screwdriver out of the way. You might have to push down the hammer or the trigger to release tension. There we are. So the whole system's back together with everything reassembled up to that point. Part 29 slides down the side here. It's a bit tight. This interacts with the safety and decocker lever. Quite tight on this one because it's been apart for a few months now. So that forces down there, and push that pin through from the other side to retain it. That locks the hammer and decocks as well. So it's a little bit stiff. So part 297, if it's fallen out before because of all the movement in there, the easiest thing to do is just slide it back up inside. There's not much room for it to go wrong now. Then the mainspring, part 167, goes up the outside of that. So just try and seat it in there. So it should be in the right place pretty much. The main retainer shoe for that. So the whole thing up. Okay, that seats in there. So pin 290 pushes through that shoe. Okay, that's got it seated. So now the mainspring's back in. Next, because it's HK45, it's got interchangeable back straps, so you just slide that back into place. And then this big cotter pin, this big roll pin rather, is what retains that. That will take some effort to get back in. Okay, with all that back together, so there's no magazine releasing yet, but as you can see, when you put the magazine in before you cock it, part 25 sits on top of the valve on the back of the magazine so it doesn't go off. Cock the hammer, so when the slide goes back, that pushes down on part 24, which lifts up at the front, lets part 27 back underneath it. Now the hammer's ready to strike this part, which will go into the valve on firing. So you can see that there's no gas in this magazine. Part 24 gets pushed down by the slide, resets the valve. Part 320, that goes through where the trigger is and pushes through there. That helps retain it in the frame. It's one of the first things you have to take out when you disassemble it to get the chassis out of the frame, so that just pops back in there. On this side, the left-handed slide release, slide stop, goes back into the slot, so it's got a nub on it to help retain it, so you need to stick it in at an angle like so and then push it down like that. Okay, so basically everything else is back together. The only thing left is the magazine release. One of the major drawbacks on the HK45 I find, I'm sometimes losing magazines mid-firefight because of it, because it's a bit too easy to actuate it with my long fingers, or just the spring wears out and the vibration of the recoil drops the magazine. So this is part number 315, the double paddles, and then the spring that goes inside there is part 89, that gives it the spring tension. So with those two installed, lever it up behind the trigger, into position, like so. So from the spring tension there. Now we just need to put the pin back through, which is part 323. So this roll pin goes through and retains the whole assembly. Possibly an idea to use a screwdriver to locate everything. So push that through first, and then push the pin through to displace that. A little bit of a shot to make sure it's central. Okay. Function test, double action's working, single action's working, out of battery safety's working, valve striker reset's working, manual safety is working, decocker's working, so it's all functional. Okay, and of course that lines up with that. It solved the problem. So beforehand, if I was inserting a magazine, racking it, I'd get dead trigger on firing. I'd have to push down really hard on the back of the slide to seat that floating part properly, because it was broken and therefore was floating inside it. So now it works, but again, this magazine release is still a problem.